listeners. Welcome to another episode of the Forever Classic Gaming Podcast. I'm Joe, one of your hosts, and joining me tonight is Alex. Welcome.
Hey, how's it going, man? It's been an interesting past couple weeks in gaming, and I'm excited to talk about all sorts of stuff with you today.
Yeah, couple of releases hit the news cycle. We've got a couple of big reviews that hit this week on the site.
Big reviews. Holy crap.
My big charity event is coming up in like 2 weeks.
The merch looks sick.
2 or 3 weeks. But yeah, things are coming along with it. I'm really looking forward to it. If this is the first time you're hearing about this, I host an annual charity marathon on my Twitch channel, Daddy Gamer YT, every year. In the past, I've been just myself for 24 hours. This year, I'm kicking it up a notch into a 3-day event. So 3 streams across 3 days, totaling 30 hours of streaming and raising money for Extra Life. So we're going to do a day of just beat 'em up and fighting games, a day of a small group of us just putzing around in Valheim trying to figure that all out. And then the third day is this like huge finale where huge like production with a bunch of people doing a tabletop role-playing game. And it's going to be sick.
I'm very excited. It all takes place over the weekend of Thanksgiving. So basically, I'll be coming down, and me and Gina will join you all for dinner. And then for the next, 3 days, we're just going to, hang out, play games, and raise a bunch of money for kids. And a lot of our people at Forever Classic are, really familiar with Extra Life. I mean, we've got our buddy Andrew at Marooners Rock, who I think just reached, $13,000 for the year or something.
I think he announced that as of the end of his, game day, it was $13,900 for the year.
Absolutely insane. I mean, he had been several thousand. He had most of that building up, but still to get about 2,000 in a game day stream is, incredible. Yeah. Big shout outs to Andrew for doing all that charity work. And he just does it out of the kindness of his heart. And that's what we're doing. And I think people will really ride with that. So
yeah, and
I'm excited.
We've got a sick lineup of merch that includes shirts and hoodies and stuff. But we also have a skateboard, which looks amazing. I and the designer of the graphic each bought one. And if those are the only 2 sold, that's fine. I know there's some people that'll be like, I can't convince my wife to let me buy the skateboard. At least 2 people have said that to me. their wives said no to the skateboard. But, with the merch sales, 50% of the proceeds or the profits are going to go towards my goal of $1,000. The remaining 50% total up front, me and the designer are splitting that.
Now, is that perpetually available, or is that only available during the event?
You will have, I think, up to a week after the end of the stream, or an end of the last day of the stream to purchase. So if you sign on and you need to wait a couple days to get a paycheck or whatever to support, but that's a really great way to support us, or, me and the guy who did the sick design work on the graphic, and give to Extra Life as well. But Alex, if someone wanted to support us, where would they do that?
Check this out. We actually have a couple different places you can do this. I really wholeheartedly recommend people just donating directly through PayPal. It's paypal.me Forever Classic Games. You can also just search for our @ symbol in a lot of different areas, and you can eventually get to that PayPal. The other thing that we've been doing here recently is, because we're such a small site and we have very little income, and in order to stay ad-free, but also have the opportunity for our contributors to make a little cash, we've included PayPal links at the bottom of every single author bio. So if you, for example, wanted to support one of Reese's articles, and you're like, man, Reese is doing really good. I like what this cat's doing. I'm going to throw him $5. You have the option to do that, and all it takes is just making that contribution, right? And we're really kind of we're building Forever Classic Games by not relying on ads, which is weird for games media, I know. And it's I know a lot of my colleagues are like, why would you even consider this? But it's crazy. It might work. And between that and services and the occasional sponsored content outside of reviews, of course, we're keeping it transparent and honest and awesome. I think we have a pretty good shot of self-sustaining ourselves at least, and maybe getting to go out to a couple events here and there. So I'm really excited about the future of Forever Classic, and we've got a couple really cool opportunities coming up. There's one I don't think I can quite talk about yet that's very exciting in January. Friends who know me locally in Minnesota probably know what I'm talking about, but we'll be involved with something pretty fun. And of course, if you're interested in having us be the like host or something at, say, for a panel at a con, or if you want to do a fighting game tournament streamed, get in touch with us because there's a pretty good chance we can make that happen.
Yeah, and you even did one recently completely virtually.
Yeah, so I'm really a big fan of the local Street Fighter Third Strike scene here in Minnesota, and shout outs to my good buddy Big Bad Wolf MN. His name's Ruben. He's a really, really cool guy. Anybody in the Third Strike space probably knows this dude. He's an excellent Hugo player. But we decided to do a first to 10 exhibition where we grabbed some of the best players in our group, the Black Sheep MN. And so lots of Minnesota, like people who've been playing for many years or people who have just mostly played through Fightcade. So we loaded up Fightcade. It's a completely free program, really, really cool. And it enables you to do rollback netcode on most of these classic fighters. And we were able to comfortably put on this exhibition match and commentate just fine through Discord. So that's something that I think we can continue to do. So if you like that, check us out on YouTube. We now have a handle now, too. So if you search at Forever Classic Games, or if you just search Forever Classic Games, you'll find it. We're going to be archiving all of our stuff there, and we might even start doing some edited works as well. We're kicking around the idea of doing a video version of Justin's review of God of War Ragnarok. So look forward to seeing some utilization on the YouTube side.
This is the first I'm hearing of that. I was planning on doing like an unboxing and first impressions of the collector's edition for God of War, which by the time you're listening to this might actually already be up on the YouTube because I got a call and I can pick mine up tomorrow night.
Yo, that's awesome.
So I might be able to do
that's
that.
ahead of schedule because it comes out on like Thursday.
Wednesday, the 9th.
Oh, okay.
It's like a weird release date.
Huh.
But
that's
yeah,
really cool.
They're gonna do a late night release on Tuesday, so I could. I'll have to call them and double check and see what the plan is.
Yeah.
Because if it's like, oh, you show up at 9 and you can pre-check out, and then we can just hand you your game and go at midnight, I might just wait till Wednesday because I don't want to be hanging around at GameStop at midnight and then get home and go to bed anyway because I got to work in the morning.
Right.
I might as well just wait until the next day. Might as well just wait until the next day and grab it. But yeah, that's something that I'm planning on doing. I'm
deeply excited about this game. I mean, obviously, I know probably more than most people because I edited Justin's review and we talked privately about a couple of key details, but he was very careful to make it spoiler free, and I think that comes through in the writing. And I'm really, really pumped for this one, man. Like, he said he cried 6 times, and I'm very excited to cry at least once.
Interesting. Hopefully I can fly through it because I want to sort of clear it out of my schedule so I have time for Pokemon.
Yeah, we are really kicking around the idea of doing a review pod for Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. And the general idea of this is we want to sit down and have a lengthy discussion about the game from people who are actively playing it or have finished it. And so, for example, for Pokemon, we'll have various versions. We'll review both of them kind of as a collection. But at the end, we'll actually give scores as if it were reviewed in written form on the website. And so you'll actually get a varying level of scores from each of us that will then, average out at the end or something. But it's a format that's pretty common in the games media space. A lot of our peers do it. And it's something that I think would really add value to some of the games that we, like, multiple parts of our website, like, get a chance to play it and cover it and want to talk about it outside just, a single reviewer or getting to do, like, a featured piece or what have you. So I'm really excited about the opportunity for Pokemon, and I really hope we get at least one review code.
I mean, I always pick up the double pack because me and my daughter play it together. So that'll be a lot of fun. But enough about what we're going to be playing.
Yeah.
What are you geeking about right now, dude?
Oh, man. Okay, so I just finished and kind of put to rest the Demon Slayer game, the Hinokami Chronicles. I don't know if I recommend it. but it certainly looks and feels like a Demon Slayer experience. Like they capture the visuals pretty well.
Which is pretty
Other than
impressive
that,
considering.
yeah, I mean it's a really particular art style with the way that like water will flow or like the way they represent elements is really really cool.
Yeah.
And some of the characters play interestingly enough. I don't think it's gonna win any awards or be what you find at your next local tournament, but that's pretty cool. Man, I'm trying to think of some of the most like super interesting things I've done, but it's been a lot of little stuff here recently. Just kind of like exploring some things, getting some backlog. I've been using a lot of different like hardware and controllers. I just got a shipment in today from SteelSeries. Big fans of them supporting our stuff. So I've completely redone my like desk setup, but a lot of it's just been playing what I can get my hands on. I've got a project coming up that I'll talk about later in the show, but there's some pretty neat things happening, but nothing outlandish to report this week, man.
I mean, did you watch like a movie or show or?
I mean, I guess I'm kind of on a Godzilla kick again right now because
When are you
Godzilla
not?
Day was recently. Well, okay, I go through waves of these things, but Godzilla Day was pretty interesting. For one, they announced that there's gonna be another Godzilla film. Big surprise. But the director of it is somebody who's done some really interesting like promotional work, and he also did some of the like scenes that they used in one of the theme park rides. I can't remember the guy's name, but it'll be a really interesting project, I'm sure. And so alongside that, and Toho, the company that does this, is weird because they won't just put some of this stuff on YouTube and let it live. There's 2 fan films, a CG one and a live action one, both starring Gigan. And the CG one with Gigan Rex is like very Evangelion. And so it's got some neat moments and some cool shots, and Godzilla does a really cool like white atomic breath and like charges up, and so I'm looking at like Godzilla figures and stuff and being like, man, I love this franchise.
Well, that sounds pretty cool. On my end of thing, it's been, I guess there's 3 big things. Got the review code that'll be coming later this month for Star Ocean Divine Force.
Yeah, I didn't even know this was coming out until we had it.
Yeah, I haven't like kept up on the series. I've heard that the more recent entries have not been notable, but Star Ocean Till the End of Time on PS2 was a game I spent an enormous amount of time in. I think it was actually the first new game I owned on PlayStation 2. And it was like significant because it was like I bought the game and I opened it up and it had 2 discs.
Yeah.
And it was like a PS2 game. And I was like, whoa, this has got to be huge. I spent a lot of time in that game, like just exploring the world. Because like you would get bonuses if you like 100% explored each map. And like, and it would stack. So like just little percentages that would like stack up over time, making your character growth better. And like,
I like that system.
But you
see that a lot in the DS era of RPGs.
But it just had like a weird like charm to it, like, and it had like some like wild ideas for like so like the premise of Star Ocean is it is like a science fiction setting where you're on a spaceship and there's like a highly advanced technological thing, but then they crash land on some backwater planet that is still in the Middle Ages. But it's against protocol, similar to Star Trek. They can't reveal to the people around them, like, "Oh, we're from space," because it would disrupt. It would like disrupt that planet's like natural progression into the space age or whatever. And so, like, that's how this like starts. Is this like kid and his friend crash landing on this planet and meeting a cast of characters and getting all wrapped up in the political drama that happens, all in an effort to try and like find some way to get back like home. And then there's like a massive twist like 3/4 of the way through the game, which, so spoiler right here, because I'm just going to talk about it. I feel like I need to explain why I'm sort of excited about the game I'm currently playing.
Go for it. Yeah.
So skip ahead a minute or two, I don't know, whatever you want to do, but about 3/4 of the game it's revealed that the entire thing is a simulation.
Oh, they pull a Matrix.
Like everything. The whole thing is a simulation. And the characters that are in this simulation get pulled into the real world. And there are people that like recognize you and are like, oh my gosh, you're like amazing, I love you. And like you discover that your character, the main character, and your party, your group, are like favorites in like, because basically there's this huge entertainment simulation and people can tune in and watch any person in this like galaxy of like characters, and people have been tuning into yours, and you found some way to like materialize yourself into the real world. That's like the big like crazy bonkers twist 3/4 of the way through this like sci-fi medieval fantasy game.
There's several of those old school RPGs where, like, I think Xenogears does something similar where partway through it's just like, oh, and all of a sudden this happens and completely changes your outlook on the entire experience. I don't know why RPGs of the time decided to bury the lead, but they did.
Yeah, but I remember like 15-year-old Joe just being like mind blown by that idea of like,
that's cool.
Oh, this is not what we thought it was. Like,
yeah.
it spent like 40 hours establishing one thing, and then it like blew the doors wide open on the possibilities of this story. So in Star Ocean Divine Force, I'm running into like all these little things that like you pick up these figures, and 2 of them are from Radiata stories, characters that,
hell yeah,
like characters that I'm like, wait a second, these look familiar. Oh my gosh, it's Jack from Radiata stories. And so like these little Easter eggs are kind of nice, but like little things like I'm sure you feel the same way when you like play a Final Fantasy game and you do the menu push and you hear that bleep, like that sound. I didn't realize I was as nostalgic for this series specific like menu sounds as I was.
Yeah, like UI tones. So to speak.
And they're using the same ones as far as I can tell, and I was like, oh man, like this is bringing a smile to my face. And like overall, I think the game's a lot of fun. It's got some really cool like exploration options, like a JRPG with
this being the new one now.
Yeah, talking about the new one.
Yeah.
Like you have a jetpack for exploration, and there's some like
that's really cool,
good action combos, and like a leveling up system. You can like use the jetpack in combat as like to like create different combos and status effects on enemies, and it's just wild. But the game also really could have used another layer of polish. So like there's some animations that feel unfinished, and I'll dig way more into all this in the finished review, but I'm like 6 hours in, and overall I'm having a good time.
Looks like there's a demo available too for that Star Ocean, so if anybody wants to try it, it's PlayStation, Xbox, PC.
I'd say it's absolutely worth a free like demo for sure.
Okay.
Check it out, cool. See if you're interested in it. The other 2 things is I've been, I finished Bayonetta 1 and 2, getting ready for 3.
Nice.
I've been putting time into it, and I'm loving it. There's a higher like focus on like the like monsters that she summons in this one.
So you started 3.
Yes, I'm like a few.
Okay.
I'm like
gotcha.
I'm like a few hours into it, and so like in 3, there's a bigger focus in the combat on being able to control the summons, which is just a ton of fun.
Love that.
So
love a good monster.
And of course, it's just like the same bonkers nonsense that you've come to expect from Bayonetta at this point. Yeah. So I'm really enjoying that. And then on Saturday, I ran another session of Curse of Strahd, and I've been having a ton of fun running that. The campaign finally, I feel like, opened up for the first time. So now where they're at, they have got a few different things they could do, and depending on what they do, it'll start actually like impacting like the campaign in bigger terms. But I did some fun things where like as they leveled up, so I did like little mini like things with each of them that like sort of like brought them to their next level. Like the druid got a one-on-one session with another person in their druid circle and taught them how to wild shape into bigger creatures. And then I handed them a stat block for a giant llama because they've been transforming into a regular llama this whole time. So now they have like
llama.
Now they have an approved giant llama like stat block that they can use for their transformation.
Hell yeah. D&D's fun. Connection to the Curse of Strahd. I just finished last night Strahd, which is the book from 1993. That is a regular piece of vampire literature.
It's one of the bookest.
It's fine.
It's one of the bookest books that ever booked.
It really is.
It's the Morbius
the ending's
of
kind of
books.
cool. They set up the idea that Strahd is in perpetual tragedy because his like true love is constantly reincarnated, and he keeps trying to like turn her to keep him with her, and he can't do it for whatever reason. And so like fate stops him, and it just makes him a more miserable person. And so that's kind of interesting, but it's for the time it might have been a little more interesting than now, but reading it today, it's like, yep, that's a ripoff of Dracula.
It's always interesting to me when they try to make the audience sympathetic to like the villain.
Right. It more or less just gives you a background for why the villain is a vampire and why he's terrifying.
Right. But it's just sort of like, oh, woe is me, I'm tragic. I miss the woman who tragically killed herself because of how horrible I was.
And the thing is the reason he it's so funny, like his brother or one of the members of his court or something comes in with like this gorgeous peasant woman, right? And he's like, oh man, she fine.
And then he betrays her.
He determines that that was his girlfriend now, and so he does everything in his power to make sure they're together.
So here's the question.
And then like they get betrayed and everybody dies, and so he's like, no, I've lost my love, blah, blah, blah. And then he turns into a vampire.
So,
and,
in the campaign, they go into some of those details of like the betrayal of his brother and like trying to like get her.
I wonder how consistent that is all these years.
So
it's like Tatiana is the like true name of this person.
Yep.
Okay.
And then like
that's interesting.
And then like the current incarnation of her is Irina. And she's like the adopted daughter of like the mayor of one of the villages, and that no one knows where she came from and all this stuff. But in the campaign, what's interesting is there's a bunch of randomized elements. So there's these items that will help the party in their quest to escape Ravenloft or escape Barovia, which is like the land that Strahd is the ruler over, because you're kind of in like a pocket dimension sort of thing. So you randomly generate these locations where like the sun sword shows up. But like there's some details, like this sun sword was Strahd's brother's, and it's a holy weapon, and so Strahd aimed to have it destroyed. But the person who destroyed it failed somehow, and all that's left is the hilt. So it's literally a lightsaber. Like you just have the hilt, and then like a shining beacon of light just flies out of it and does a bunch of damage to undead and stuff like that. But I'm curious, like, does the book go into like the fact that he had a sword or whatever, and he tried to cast it out at all?
So I think he touches on the brother having a sword that he's like wary of, but this is like advanced D&D level of like tomfoolery, right? So everything is very scaled back as far as the scale of how some of these like spells and stuff work. So a lot of it's like, oh, he doesn't like the intentionality of people who believe in things. So there's a scene where he's like entering a monk's room to kill the monk for, various reasons, and the monk has like asked all the other monks in the abbot to like leave holy symbols all over his room, and even though that individual doesn't believe in these gods, the people who put them there wholeheartedly believed in them and granted them a lot of power, which Strahd feels and weakens him overall. So there's like these really interesting like classic approaches to magic in this particular story. I still hold that like the coolest version of Dracula I've seen in the like classical sense is Dracula from the Castlevania Netflix series. That is an awesome representation of Dracula.
Yeah. So in our campaign, like, it's kind of funny because the Sunblade was randomly generated in like a small camp just outside of like the first village. So they're like level 3 and they come across one of the most powerful swords in all of D&D.
Awesome.
And the rogue is the one who ended up with it, which is just kind of funny that this rogue who's trying to be sneaky has a sword that like emits 30 feet of light, like bright light. But because he's like, you can use it as a rogue weapon. It is versatile, so you can use your dex, and so you can get like sneak attack on it. You just have to think about it in like some different terms. But the sword has been officially renamed Shine Shank.
Shine Shank. That's a good one.
Basically, I sent the player a bunch of like, because he was like, I don't really like Sunsword. It's kind of a boring name. And I'm like, yeah, I get that. So I sent him a few options, and like Shine Shank was one. And he's like, I like that one a lot. And so we renamed it Shine Shank.
It's like those videos where they're in like a parking garage and it's like, here's the most powerful flashlight. And they turn it on and it just illuminates the entire thing.
Excuse me.
One other thing I want to touch on before we move into our main topic. The Chainsaw Man anime is fucking great. I really recommend it. It's very violent. So anybody who's like squeamish or whatever, maybe don't watch it because it's really gory and very gross in points. But God, it is great. It's animated exceptionally well. It's extremely funny. And it like really elevates the manga, which was already super good. So Chainsaw Man is going to be the new hotness.
I've heard a lot about it recently, so I'll at the very least check it out. Whether or not I'll stick with it and watch more of it is another question. But I'm definitely like dedicated to like it's on my like list and of things to do. In
you'd be interested for the artistry style, like the level of detail in the manga panels and the way they like capture action in the show. I think you would really find both intriguing.
Yeah, I'll have to give it a look.
Yeah.
So, kind of bouncing off of last week's topic, where we talked about games that took us a few times of trying to play it before we actually, like, played the game or got through it.
Right.
For various reasons, whether it's intentional replayability that Zach brought up, or it was just like, wasn't in the mood for that game when I first started it, or another game came out at the time, lost access to
beginnings,
or like the copy I was playing was bad, like an hour in.
It's the downfall of having multiple discs on the original PlayStation is more opportunities to have damaged discs.
Which is great for like having a digital version on my PlayStation Vita of Legend of Dragoon, because then I don't have to worry about it. But bouncing off of that, got me kind of thinking, when I first thought of that idea, it got me thinking of other games that we played way later. So like the game originally came out in 96, but we didn't play it until 2014 or whenever the case may be. And so like I thought that would spark an interesting conversation surrounding about like what drove us to play the game outside of its like hype cycle, you know? Like, you're not constantly hearing about, like, games on the Super Nintendo anymore. Unless they're, like, being released on the Virtual Console or Nintendo Online service. But, like, even a game that's, like, 2 or 3 years old, like, the advertising and hype cycle of it is way gone. The game's probably $20 on a used game shelf somewhere at a pawn shop. And what brings us to wanting to pick it up finally?
So it's a really interesting situation that we find ourselves in, right? Because me and you have both always been kind of chasing the dragon, so to speak, whether it's, you know, the next review or figuring out like what games are like we anticipate to be popular or exciting or hit the genre or the mechanics or the things that we're specifically looking for. But we also are in a unique position because the entire concept of Forever Classic Games is looking at games in its entirety. Whether it's from the past, whether it's a fan game, whether it's some random project that barely works, that has an interesting quality. Like, we literally cover anything and everything in the pursuit of things that are fun. And so that sort of mentality has kind of kept me playing a lot of different things. But I think the reason that most of the games on our list that we've come back to well after it's came out, well after the cycle, or even beyond when it was reported, is the prestige of the title. The first one on both of our list is Chrono Trigger.
Yep.
And the reason for that is because Chrono Trigger is such a specific instance of like RPG superpowers coming together to create the Justice League. Well, yeah, and so it shows in the quality of the game.
If you
all
look
these
at,
years later.
If you look at top games of all time lists, you'll probably see it there. And if you narrow it down to top RPGs, it's sometimes number one.
Yep.
So, like, it is a highly recommended game since its release, and it was very hype upon release because it was, like, the team behind Dragon Quest and the team behind Final Fantasy came together to make a game. And so you've got you've got this sort of like artistic style and sort of like storytelling from like the Dragon Quest team, and then you've kind of got the game mechanic prowess and like presentation ability of the Final Fantasy side kind of coming together and making like a super RPG on the Super Nintendo.
I mean, even at the time, they were referred to as the Dream Team. And just pulling up a wiki real quick, Hironobu Sakaguchi, who is the creator of Final Fantasy, Yuji Horii, the creator of Enix's Dragon Quest, like we mentioned, and then, of course, Akira Toriyama, who is the designer of Dragon Ball Z, Dragon Quest, among many other things. And so Chrono Trigger, like, is this perfect storm of, like, not only these creative, like, musicians and artists and such, but also the tech behind it for the time was outstanding.
And I think part of why it took me so long to play it was accessibility. This game has been it's been ported. It's been ported quite a few times, but most of those ports are not very good. Like they ported it to PlayStation, but it's like literally they click and dragged the Super Nintendo ROM onto a PlayStation readable disc, and so you go into a battle and there's a load time. It's wild. You pick an attack and there's a load time, and all that time really starts to stack up. That was my first time playing Chrono Trigger. Was a friend of mine who's like, I play this game at least once a year. I love it, and I think you would really like it. I'm like, well, I have heard of it before, and he would come over and watch me play it, and we got like 3 hours into the PlayStation version. I'm like, no, I can't do this. This is so bad. And it was like
I think I got cleared a frog and the Masamune splitting the mountain. I think that's where I stopped, was that whole arc.
But like what we ended up doing then was just switching over to my Wii U at the time. This is how long it took me. I went to the Wii U and then did the Wii channel and got it on Virtual Console for Wii. And
which is the Super Nintendo game.
Right, which is just the Super Nintendo emulation on the hardware. And so then I got into it and I cleared through it. And then like 6 months to a year later, I came across a used copy of the DS version at like my local game shop. And so I picked that up for a decent price. And now every time I replay the game, I play that version because it includes all of the like cool, unique, like full motion.
It's got an extra dungeon and stuff.
It's got an extra dungeon.
And it's got all the cutscenes.
All the animated cutscenes that weren't present in the original are in the DS version.
Slightly improved script, I believe. Like, classic RPG scripts are an interesting subject, too, because they evolve over time. Like, the way that those games were localized is worth studying in itself. And it's funny that you meant that, like, the version that you played and finished and like, the Wii U version, is the version that I eventually sat down and finished.
Yeah.
Because I needed to play the game for an essay that I was doing for the 100 Greatest Console Video Games, 1988 to 1998, by our friend Brett Weiss.
Yeah.
You also have an essay in that book, and I believe that book, if not available now, should be available by the end of the year. But that's the whole reason I sat down to play it, and obviously, you know, the prestige, the Final Fantasy connection, that PlayStation version was paired with Final Fantasy IV, which is how I ended up with it. I was like, oh, I'm collecting the Final Fantasies, and a friend of mine's got this, and it came with Chrono Trigger, so I tried it out, of course. But yeah, I mean, the fact that that game stands the test of time again and again and again is just crazy to me.
Yeah. It's just unfortunate that it really did have like a long series of bad ports, because it came to mobile devices, it came to PC, but they had like redone the art in a weird way that
the UI is awful.
And it used that like standard Android or Apple like font that just had no character or flavor at all to it. And then it wasn't until like recently that they finally went in and just, okay, you guys it's clear you guys want the original version. Like, here it is, finally. And that wasn't even that long ago.
They crossed paths a little bit. So the most recent Steam version is up to date in the way that like it leans more on the design philosophy of the Steam version, or the Super Nintendo version, but it still doesn't have the extra content as the DS version. So still the best way to play this game is kind of through a DS emulator, because you get like the added resolution of, you know, scaling up the game to a PC's resolution.
Yeah.
and the extra content. But
don't
I
know,
mean,
there's
playing
just
through the Steam version is fine now. It's just not recommended.
I love playing through this game on the DS. Like just getting
Yeah, no, it's fine.
cozy. Even on I have a 3DS XL, but I almost prefer playing it on the DS Lite because
Yeah.
it's not stretching it. It's like really small and like it's just comfortable to just like play it.
So
And
for
it
that essay, I played it.
and it utilizes the bottom screen really well for the menus.
Yeah. Whenever I played, so I finished the Wii U version, but then I was like, I gotta study these other versions, and so I played, the Steam version. I downloaded it on my phone, and I think I rebeat the game on the DS, and I just, golden critical pathed it,
Yeah.
and it was an enjoyable like study. I loved looking up all the essays and things that people had said about it, all the interviews. Like it was a really enjoyable like deep dive.
When you sit down to play this game, even if you haven't heard a ton about it, as you get into it, as long as you're not getting hung up on like load times or things that are
Right.
getting in the way of enjoying the experience, you can tell it's something special.
Mm-hmm.
But it is just like interesting that it really took the recommendation of a friend, and he like gave me like $5 to like purchase the game. He's like, you need to play this game. And
Yeah,
so
I will buy
like,
it for you.
yeah, like literally that's what it was. And yeah, it's definitely something that I think at this point, since playing it the first time on the virtual console, I've played the DS version like 2 or 3 times. I've never done like like all the endings. I just like playing through it.
It's a solidly made game, and I think a lot of titles in the retro era, like before we get into 3D, like sprite-based games, I think have a really good longevity because their art style is still very striking and like interesting and enjoyable to the eye and all these reasons, right? It's the weird hangups of early 3D, and even now that's getting kind of stylish. We'll talk about that soon. But there's something about like the way sprites are designed that's just timeless, and they really put a lot of effort into all the different assets. I mean, Square Enix in particular, some of the greatest like sprite art ever conceived. If you break outside of that into things like fighting games, that's why a lot of arcade fighters I think still look so good now, is because of that effort into making sure the art side was really, really strong. And so there's a lot of games that I think really kind of like extend their longevity based on that art direction.
Yeah. But so we both had Chrono Trigger right up front.
Yes.
I think it's just a standout like thing that it, even as someone who grew up in the 90s, it just didn't have access to it, wasn't on my radar. The game didn't have a big print run, so it's kind of hard to find a copy of it outside of digital distribution. Or
I wasn't
like,
buying a lot of new games back in that era. I was getting things from like, Rite Aid that were deeply discounted.
Right.
I remember distinctly looking at like a wall of Super Nintendo games and being able to buy a full price game for the first time that I can remember anyways. And my mom's like, what do you want? And I was looking at Mario RPG and Super Godzilla. And I think I've told this story before on the podcast, but I picked Super Godzilla incorrectly. But I'm fond of that game now because I played it in a weird time in my life.
So what do you got next on, like, what's next on your list?
So equally as far as games that have a lot of like prestige and legacy, the one that always got away from me because it's not a setting that I find myself super, super interested in, but I like talking about it, is Metal Gear Solid. We've talked extensively about this game in particular because I did a whole thing where I like streamed the game front to back. I wrote this big long essay for it on our website, and it's a series that Zach has been pitching for a long time for me to play because he's a big fan of it, right? And so it's something about that game. It was just, I finally like sat down with my PS3, so it was, a DualShock 3, fairly representative of the PlayStation controller, and I just went through it. And I succeeded somehow, I guess. But that game always got away from me because the controls are just finicky enough. And the game is just, like, complex enough that it's kind of hard to get into unless you have some sort of guidance.
It's ambitious for, like, a PlayStation 1 game. Like, even its sequels, even its sequels can be clunky and feel weird on even better hardware that can do even more, because it's just, like, he builds so many different things into his games. Like, Kojima really loves his systems and interacting with the world in different ways, and you have to like put the game into like various modes almost to perform different functions. Oh, you want to shoot?
It's a different way of thinking.
You have to shoot. You have to go into first person mode.
Yeah.
And aim.
You have to ready your firearm. You have to bring it to vision. Like there's a whole like process to it.
And you can do it quickly. Like you can just choose to do it. But if you want to aim, you have to go through this like meticulous process, which, you know, depending on how much patience you have for that sort of thing, can get tedious or boring. But it's also somewhat realistic. If you're sneaking into a military base and you need to take your time to make sure you don't miss that shot, so you have to like pull out the gun, set it up, crouch, like put the sight to your eye, like do all those things.
You have to make a deliberate kill, which was very ahead of its time.
Yeah, I've not played the original Metal Gear Solid. The only Metal Gear, well, I've played 2.
I like it.
I've played 2 and 3, and I've enjoyed both of those. I think I've got 5. I picked up 5 recently at some point. It's on my list to play eventually.
From what I gather, that's the most enjoyable mechanically, as far as like in a modern sense playing the 5th one.
Yeah, I'm also curious to see, just like, I know that like there's a huge visual increase over time with this series. Like,
yeah,
there's just as much investment in the visuals as it is in the like layering of mechanics and trying to smooth and iron that out.
Despite its looks and all of that, it's still a very well directed experience, and it's a very cinematic experience that harkens back to a lot of like film stuff, right? I mean, this has been studied extensively, so I won't get into it too much. But I paired this game with Death Stranding, which was my first Kojima game that I beat start to finish. So it was a very interesting like thought this is how I come back to these games, Joe. It's like I go into it with a goal, or I want to learn something, or I want to like try to connect to these larger stories and these like big legacy titles, like why they're so cool. That's what really drives me to playing some of these bigger titles for the first time.
Yeah, so you're sort of saying you grabbed Death Stranding and you're like, oh, this is interesting. It's got some ideas here. I'm curious as to like what you had heard that people were excited that Kojima's new game was out. Well, I want to figure out why they're excited about it by playing one of his early games.
The big thing is I hadn't finished a Kojima game, and I've always been fascinated by Kojima's like work and the team that he surrounds himself with. And so the reason I even picked up Death Stranding was the trailers were so like enthralling.
Oh yeah,
like, what is going on in here?
Like this baby giving you a thumbs up. Like,
I wanted to know so bad what Death Stranding was about, and I went on that journey. I went on that hike. And I enjoyed it. Like it was a really like thoughtful, meditative experience. And so I recommend, if you're in the right headspace, to really like jump into Death Stranding and just go for it. If you have to put on a podcast, like by all means, but man, that soundtrack is fantastic.
It really is. It introduced me to a couple of bands that I now like follow.
Churches. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's some good
Churches
stuff.
is real good.
But next for me is Persona 4 Golden.
Okay, yeah.
And the main reason it took me so long to play any Persona game, and I played Persona 4 Golden for the first time this year. I haven't even played Persona 5 yet. I've, like the one that people were telling me to play, I was just like, eh. And
the most mainstream of Persona games is P5.
Right. And so like I was well aware of the series. I was well aware of the series before Persona 5 had come out.
Same. Mm-hmm.
But the reason I didn't like jump into it until like recently is going to college. I think Persona 4 had recently come out on PS2, and every time I went to a friend's house or their apartment, one of the 4 of them was always playing this game.
That series is really like people who are really into the library of the PS2, especially at the time, like finding hidden gems was fun because there was so much.
It's true.
So people who are like, oh, I love Shadow Hearts, or oh, I love Radiata Stories, and so those are the type of people that like I hung out with, and those were the people that were like, yo, Persona 4 is sick.
But so like for me though, I am not a fan of like life sims. Like I don't like The Sims. I never got, like, Second Life seemed like the most boring. Like, oh look, my sim is playing a video game, and I'm like, I would rather just be playing another video game. And so when I'm at my friend's house, and every time I'm over there, one of the four of them is playing this game where it seemingly is just people picking what they're going to do after school. Yep. I'm like, I'm out. This does not interest me at all. And I'm not into like watching other people play these games. Flash forward.
So there's a word that almost fits into Persona, and I think I might have this right. That like the slice of life experience where you're going through day-to-day activities and you have like, you know, characters you're interacting with in the town. I think the word is bokunatsu, which is a very particular genre that really kind of leans into like a couple notable releases on the like Japanese PlayStation. And so there's some really good essays by people like Hazel touches on this. And I also believe that Tim Rogers recently put out a big video on one of these. Fascinating genre.
Yeah, so it just wasn't something that was like appealed to me for the longest time. And then, you know, flash forward to like last summer or whatever, I pick up another Vita because I kind of missed having one. You had you had a copy of Persona 4 Golden, and I'm like, you know what?
Oh yeah, that used to be my copy.
This is like the most celebrated game on the system.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to give it a shot because I realized that my experience with Fire Emblem Three Houses, I'm like, okay, maybe I don't hate this as much as I thought it was. If there's like a strong narrative element and characters that I enjoy, it's a little bit more than that. But when I was just like watching someone else play it like for 20 minutes, I didn't understand what it was all about. I thought it was just some weird life sim RPG thing, and I'm like, ugh, I'd rather just go on a high-end adventure rather than go to class. But like
Persona,
it becomes
like,
interesting
outside of its context is a hard sell.
Yeah, it becomes interesting when you think about time economy. Your choices start to matter because you're trying to build a relationship with these characters for game mechanic reward. Or, you know, you get more information or access to a new area. So you're trying to like be intentional with your time. Or, I want my character to get good grades or make more money, or like, but once you make that choice, it's locked in and it goes to the next day. You miss out on things just like real life. And so like, that appealed to me. And of course, the art style in the game just looks incredible on the Vita OLED, which is sort of why I picked up Persona 5 on Switch, is because I'm like, my experience with this series has been on OLED screens. Just going to keep it in that.
Persona's really come into like its own visual language. It's like really clashing colors and big sweeping animations and lots of angles and style. Like, it really starts to take shape in Persona 3, but it like absolutely defines itself in Persona 4. And so that is carried through to everything following, not just the numbered games, but also most of the Shin Megami Tenseis and the spin-offs. Like, the dance games are visually stunning.
Yeah. And so like that's the other thing, is Persona 4 is broadened my horizons in a couple of ways. I've picked up a couple of the Shin Megami Tensei games. I think I've got 3 and 5 now, and they're on.
Yeah, I've got a few of those.
They're in my stack. I've got Persona 5 now, and so like another game that I'm going to give a shot, just because I gave this one a shot and played it all the way through. It's a little long, and I think the ending, I was satisfied with a specific ending, and then there's an extended ending that I'm just like, this feels like I was fine with the ending being a little bit more scaled back. I don't need to kill God.
Right, yeah. And that's the trope that
of all JRPGs. Really.
Like, the worst part of Persona 5 is the last act, arguably.
So I'm going to quickly jump through my next couple because the way I got into them is similar. Shovel Knight I had heard about for a while, and then I got a review code for the last game in the Trove, which is King of Cards.
Yeah.
I think that's what it's called.
It's King of Cards sounds right.
But anyway, so I got the last game as a review code to review it, and I loved it. So then I went back, I got the Treasure Trove, the whole thing, as a review so I could play the most recent part of it. And I went back and replayed Shovel Knight. And then I played, like, I think Death Knight's campaign as well. And I haven't finished the whole treasure
Plague
trove.
of Shadows.
But, the fact that, I got the most recent piece of it and I went back and played it. And it was like a couple of years after the game had come out at that point. And it's such a good game. And similarly so, on PS3, I'd gotten a review code for Yakuza 5.
Yep, I remember this.
And I fell in love with it. It was such an astounding, I've never played a game that told the story in a way that it did, with some beat 'em up mechanics that I loved, outrageous characters that were still weirdly grounded. I don't know how they make that edge of characters that feel grounded but also are just the most ridiculous nonsense you've ever seen.
The wackiest people you've ever met.
Right. So then, going back over the years and playing through 1 through 4 has been exceptional. And of course I picked up Like a Dragon when it came out. Playing 5 made me go, I need to know more about this series. And going back,
they've
and
retroactively called the entire thing Like a Dragon, so that is the English way to refer to those games from here on out. But I mean, the legacy Yakuza titles, I played the demo and thought, oh, this is kind of neat, little beat 'em up GTA kind of thing, and never thought anything else about it. And then of course years go by and these games keep coming out, and I see all these remakes and such, and my favorite thing about a lot of the games we've talked about is the fact that they're so readily available. Persona 4 being a recent example, and it still hasn't come to Switch yet, but is planned for it.
Yep.
But you can play the entire Yakuza franchise on PS4.
Yep.
And it's relatively inexpensive to do so.
And what's wild is when you play and something to understand if you're interested in Yakuza is Kiwami and Kiwami 2 are remakes of the first two. But when you play those, you're this originally came out on PlayStation 2.
Yep.
This is so way above and beyond what I thought that system could accomplish in this way. And there's not much changes from the originals to other than a visual upgrade, and I think they rebalanced and redid some of the controls so that they were better, because it was kind of clunky originally.
Yeah,
but
very repetitive is what a lot of reviewers called the original Yakuza.
So they they did some of that. But what are some of the other ones that you had?
Okay, so back to the kind of PlayStation era, the Onimusha series I've talked about a lot. It was another stream project. I've done a big essay on it. The reason I think I finally jumped into these is because I found pristine copies at a used game store for $10 a piece. And they had all of them. So I'm like, oh, that's cool. I know this is a pretty short-lived series, and it's Capcom. I love Capcom. And so I jumped into these things. And from that moment on, I'm like, there's enough of these games I could feasibly own all of them and not spend a whole lot of money and probably have a really good time. So I started collecting all of the Onimusha titles. And that franchise, I think, is one of the ones out of Capcom's library, aside from maybe Dino Crisis, that really, really deserves another chance. And so the whole history behind how they used famous actors and the tech they were utilizing and the way the game feels, the first 3 Onimusha games are really stellar. And they're a great representation of the PS2.
Yeah, Onimusha 2 was the game that I got with my PlayStation 2, because I bought it used, and it was the game that came with it. And I think I've told this story even on the podcast before, but I didn't have a memory card for a long time. So it was playing Onimusha 2 until I died, because there was no... If you died, it would have to load a save. There wasn't a checkpoint.
Right.
And we made it to the final boss. And then
Lots
died.
of games were like that back
and
in the day.
then we died. So then I finally got a memory card and beat the game properly. But
that was a struggle, man. Memory cards were just as expensive as games almost in the day.
Yeah,
but I really like the Onimusha games. I think I was first introduced it via manual, but a kid on the bus was really into the second one, right? And he was showing me all these cool samurais and demons and shit in this manual. And I'm like, oh, that's cool.
Oh,
so mentally, I logged it into my brain, and it lived there until I played them.
You just unlocked a memory. I had the game manual, the game guide for Onimusha 2. And it was one of those...
They're really nice.
It was one of those ones where I'm fairly certain there was a section of back pages that you had to consciously tear open to have access.
I can go look at it. Hang on.
Okay.
Hold down the fort.
Okay.
I don't know about tearing
No,
things,
I'm talking
but-
about the strategy guide.
Oh, in the strategy guide.
The
Now that I don't
the
have.
strategy guide,
But,
I
like-
think, had a section in it where you would like fold it over and tear it open to get to the secrets.
Ooh, that's cool.
And I think, if I remember correctly, my Lord of the Rings Return of the
God.
King strategy guide also had that. But like, I remember like looking through and like you could unlock costumes for the characters if you beat the game in certain ways or got X number of like souls and spent them on this thing. Like, it had a pretty robust unlocking like reward system for completing the game.
Yeah, there's like extra costumes and characters and stuff in a lot of these old Capcom games. It's just really cool. And the other thing that I remember with this particular franchise is I rented Blade Warriors, the Onimusha like Smash Brothers style
It's
game,
so
right?
bad.
And I got this game at a rental store in the middle of Calhoun County because we had a gas station that had like games or whatever, and so I rented this thing. And then I unlocked Mega Man, and I'm like, what the hell is this? And it's from then on, I've always liked Capcom, but like Onimusha is a really interesting franchise for me historically. But the manual is really funny because there's character models that are clearly like they just like cut around them in Photoshop. They're really, really bad in black and white. But then they also have images where it's like the character art, which actually looks rendered and realized.
Right.
But it's just funny. Like there's an image in here that's a really bad, like pixelated lightning bolt that you can't even like make out. It's just nonsense.
I remember being a dumb, like, horny teenager and being like, I ain't ever gonna unlock that bikini costume for one of the characters because it like you had to do so much. Like, you had to like beat the game without taking a hit.
Right.
And I was like,
They made you work for them.
I was
kiddies.
like, I ain't doing that.
I remember being very young and very amused by the physics of Soul Calibur and Dead or Alive. You know, there was a whole like genre of games where they really tried to up the pixels for specific character types. But back to Capcom, man, like there's games that I really fall in love with, and then I'll look back to how we got there. So Resident Evil 4, I was wholeheartedly recommended from a friend. I wasn't super into horror things at the time, and I was really freaked out playing this game. But the game was so good that I pushed through, creating some of the most tense, like, terrifying gaming moments of my entire life. But eventually, I picked up a flash cart for my DS, and I found a copy online, of course, of Resident Evil Dual Strike or whatever it is, the DS version of the original game. It's not a great version of the original game.
This is the first time I've even heard of this.
I was compelled, but it's the original game. It's just got some, like, you can play it, like, as it was intended, kind of, on the PS1, or you can play this, like, DS version where you do little touchscreen hack and slash scenes that are really bad and dumb.
The only DS titles
functional.
for Resident Evil I was aware of up until just now were the, like, I think it's Revelations 1 and 2 on 3DS.
So Revelations is really good. The second one came out on like PC and Xbox in episodes, so it's a weird title. But that Revelations game, I still stand by as like one of the better Resident Evil games. And they also remade that one with third-person camera, which is weird because the DS is the one that has a first-person view for shooting specifically. But the DS version of the original Resident Evil kind of made me love tank control titles. I mean, I was playing like Dino Crisis at the time. I was really exploring like PS1, PS2, Capcom era games in, you know, at like whole series at a time. And so eventually I was like, well, I kind of like these tank control style things. Like, I get it now. When we were kids, we got a version of the Wii port of the first Resident Evil and couldn't figure out how to move. It was me and Marshall, and we like took it back. We're like, this game sucks. Back to GameStop with you.
Back to the store with you.
We didn't even return it. Like, we traded it in for pennies on the dollar, and we're like, we don't care. This game's awful. And, of course, come to find out, it's one of our favorite franchises ever, and we really like that first game. So it's ironic. But, yeah, I have a tendency to find, like, the best of a franchise and then be like, well, why is this so good? What steps did they have to take to get to this moment?
Yeah. The last significant one that I have is Pokemon 3rd Generation, Sapphire, Ruby, and Emerald.
Yeah. Now, do you include Leaf Green and Fire Red, or?
I mean, it's technically the same generation, but I did play those.
Okay.
Because a cool new way to play, like, the first generation. Like,
Yeah.
I loved that idea.
I like those games a lot.
Sapphire, Ruby, and Emerald, I was just sort of like, I got to an age where I was like, oh, I'm getting too old for kid games like Pokemon. And
They're refreshers at the time.
And so I was just sort of like fell out of it because I wanted to be cool and edgy, or whatever the hell that means. Anyway, I was an idiot. I was a moron is what the moral of the story is. I modded my Game Boy Advance when I was like a few years ago. I had been garage sale hopping, came across a couple of good deals on some Game Boys and some games that included the Pokemon games. Had been sitting on a copy of Emerald for a while, and I finally just sat down and played through it on. I think I was originally playing it on the DS Lite, because that screen's great. It's just like
a good screen.
It's just a perfect like GBA screen. But I've modded my Game Boy Advance now, and so I finished the game on that, and it's a great Pokemon game, and it's hard. Like there were times where I'm like, I have to like actually consider my strategies right now, because the gym leader has considered, like, the ice gym knows I'm gonna come try and rolling in here with a fire Pokemon and just wreck their crap. So then their like ice Pokemon knows a rock move that just destroys my like my fire Pokemon, and I'm like, hey, that's cheating. But it's
my level 80 Blaziken gets hit on the chin real hard.
Right. And so it's just like it was the first time in a long time that I had really had to consider my Pokemon strategy. And especially coming off of Sword and Shield, which was so easy in terms of just playing through the story. I'm sure there's like deeper mechanics, like professionally or competitively, that you could get into, but that I've never been into Pokemon for that side of it. I just like creating a team and rolling through the story and collecting gym badges and the mindlessness of the grinding. I like all those aspects of Pokemon. But like when my daughter, who couldn't read at the time, can beat the game, maybe it's a little too easy.
Yep.
But I love.
Now, if you are into the general idea of competitive Pokemon, the best way to play that is online through a browser, Pokemon Showdown. Like, legitimately one of the best plays to just make full IV teams, play around with strategies. You learn, like, turn rotations and stuff. It's fascinating, man. It's a completely different way to play.
But yeah, I had a great time with it, and I was just sort of bummed that when some of my other friends were playing them, I wasn't. I missed out on that, like, community experience with them. Granted, it only took one more generation for me to just... I think it was Diamond and Pearl came out next, and I was back. Like, I was not out of Pokemon for very long, and I've basically gotten every game since, ironically enough, except for the remakes of Ruby and Sapphire. I skipped them.
I played those. Those I actually liked more, because I actually don't like Ruby and Sapphire for particular reasons. I think it kind of like, it really tries to focus in on certain things. There's a vibe in that game that I really like this laid back kind of like nature centric with a lot of water around you. I think that's a really cool setting. But I thought the remake was really well done, especially that final act where you get to like get a little extra with Rayquaza. All of that's really cool. And the like primal versions of Grout. Like, I really like the legendaries of Ruby Sapphire. But the hard one for me was Black and White. That game's like frustratingly hard.
The sprite work in Sapphire, Ruby, and Emerald is super good. But
it's a like iconic art style, right?
But yeah, but for, because I wasn't nostalgic for Ruby and Sapphire when they came out with remakes, I was like, and just sort of skipped them. And so like going back and playing it was a lot of fun. But I picked up X and Y, and I picked up Sun and Moon. I didn't do like Ultra Sun and Moon. I'm like, all right, guys.
Yeah.
Like. I picked up Black and White. I picked up Black and White 2. I had a copy of Platinum for a while.
Sure.
The remakes of Gold and Silver. Like, I unfortunately had to sell all that to like pay bills at one point, and so getting that stuff back now sucks. But
emulation, man, flashcards. They're a godsend. and they've enabled me to like pay a few bills because I can comfortably sell off those like really valuable old Pokemon games because people love that stuff, man. They're well made. They're very formulaic, and I really hope that this next entry helps us push that boundary finally.
Yeah.
Much like how Pokemon Legends did.
I hope
We'll
that
see.
my big hope for Scarlet and Violet coming up is they've come up with a fun way for like a cooperative multiplayer of like
I'm excited to be able to take things any way you want. Like finally they just added a system where gym leaders get stronger if you show up stronger.
Yeah. I mean, they've always sort of had it non-linear ever since like even the first one. You could play like the middle chunk of them in any order. But yeah, they did. It's not like if you went back to like if you skip, 3 of them and come back, they're stronger than they would have been if you'd done them in order. You're just rolling into Lieutenant Surge and kicking his ass at level 50.
Yeah, there's an intended order to most of the Pokemon gym leader arc, right? But it's really fascinating that finally, like, and here's the thing is ROM hackers have been doing this shit for decades. So there's this, like, I mean, it sells, right? Pokemon has always sold. So there's this interesting dynamic between, like, things we know are going to work in Pokemon versus ways we can like push the idea further. And that's where indies and ROM hacks and that sort of thing comes in. So we have things like Disc Creatures and Koromon all like doing their own thing. Temtem is kind of weird and different. And then a lot of these indie games have started adding like in-game Nuzlocke modes, which is really cool. And so people just have been like playing around with the framework of Pokemon for a very long time.
Yeah.
I just hope we finally get to see some of the restraint taken off a little bit.
Yeah,
from the
I kind of wish Pokemon would take inspiration from its community rather than trying to like Like I understand needing to like maintain your copyright and like
no, of course,
do all that stuff, but like when you have a community that's like Nuzlocke's a really cool and fun way to like challenge yourself to play this game, and then like officially they come out against playing the games those way, like an official Pokemon representative spoke out against playing the game in that way, and I'm like, but they're self-imposing it like on themselves and doing it like they're not harming the game in any way. Like,
don't you tell me how to play the game that I purchased. Come on.
Like, it's just a weird stance to take. And like, I wish they would take inspiration from that. Like, do you want us to like come out with a Pokemon game that you can in the beginning choose like harder difficulty where you're locked into certain like rule sets? Like they did it in Hades. After a certain point, you can like make the game harder.
Yeah.
And
just for fun.
And people love it. But the last thing I'll say about Pokemon and my desire for like a good like cooperative multiplayer experience is, as someone who plays it with their kid, if we could run around and like catch Pokemon together rather than next to each other, and I think the only thing Sword and Shield did was the like the raid battles that you could do against giant Pokemon,
right?
And then a battling and trading. But like, if I want to do more than that, and it kind of looks like this game, the new generation might do a little bit more with that, but they've also not really been forthcoming about what it is, so we'll see.
Reviews are going to be really fun for that one.
Yeah. So it looks like you might have one more that you might want to talk about, or do you want to just like...
I want to rattle off, because I mentioned this project earlier in the show. I'm really fascinated by classic PC first-person shooters. And so I've talked about this before, but like I didn't have a PC growing up. I had consoles. And so now that I have like a PC that'll run classic Doom, which is ironic because most things will run classic Doom, I go back and play like Quake or Fear recently. And I recently got the opportunity to pitch some articles to E1M1 magazine, which is a physical print magazine that celebrates the like both retro and retro-inspired FPS genre that's kind of really taking shape right now in a lot of fun and interesting ways. And so you might be able to read my name in one of those magazines coming soon. So look out for that. That should be a lot of fun. And it's weird too, because some of these games, like, people are aware that they're going back and playing old things. So some groups will go in and like make Turok way more playable than it's ever been and like make the game look way better than ever. And add ultra wide support for who knows what reason. So it's a really fun, like, micro, almost niche genre to play around in. But the last thing that I come into really like appreciating way later is Street Fighter Third Strike. And this goes back to the idea of how, like, art direction really adds to the longevity of titles. And this particular one is spurned on by the people that play it. Street Fighter Third Strike is a very deeply complex fighting game beyond what you're just looking at. So the way moves clash, getting like certain timings for things, being able to parry certain things, which is very difficult to do. Like, people have got this game down to a science, and it's still exciting to watch years and years later. Like, the meta is still changing up a little bit. And so you see these players like come up through Evo or Combo Breaker or what have you, either playing on the arcade or Fightcade or like the 360 port that Iron Galaxy did, who later did the new Killer Instinct. Like, there's so much love for this game, and it's so mechanically interesting to break apart and learn about. And I just have a lot of fun, like, playing it semi-casually with my friends that are way better than I am. People like Ruben and Blue Abs and Milpy, the folks of that Minnesota community. We've seen them on stream. They're really passionate about what they do. And so that keeps them together. And that's, you know, some people get together and watch the Vikings game, or, you know, are really into going out and playing pachinko or what have you. Like, everybody has that one hobby, and for these folks it's Street Fighter, and they bring in new people, they teach new people, there's new ways to play. It's one of the most exciting times ever because of Fightcade. You can play online really, really well with rollback against people from all over the world. So anyone with a passing interest is coming back to Street Fighter. People who are new to the game, there's so many cool things kind of surrounding Third Strike, and Third Strike branches off to these other games that is equally interesting. So I don't know. Fighting games are cool, man.
Yeah, I've definitely, it's been fun watching you like dive into these fighting games, and like not just like what's hot and fresh, but also like what's classic and enduring. And I think that's true of like all of the games that we listed tonight. Is like part of why we dove into these so late is, and the reason why we remember them as a game we dove in late, is because of their place as like great games of their time. Like,
right.
Yes.
Or the community that continues talking about it.
Technically, Alex, you played Fight Club the video game way after its release, but you didn't write it down on the list.
I did, because it was funny.
And so maybe that's
was a hilarious $20.
Maybe that's another reason to like play a game, is you like know it's going to be just an atrocious experience, and it's worth a novelty. But if you have games that you played way later, like whether it's an intentional patient gamer or a recommendation from a friend, or even one of us put you towards playing one of those games, let us know. Hit us on Twitter, wherever you find us. We got a great Discord.
If Twitter's dead, you can find any social media we're connected through foreverclassicgames.com.
But yeah, Alex, why don't you sound us off?
All right, so like I was saying, foreverclassicgames.com is the place to be. As we talked about earlier in the show, hit us up on that PayPal if you feel like supporting us financially. That's a huge part of how we're going to be able to grow this particular platform. So if you have the ability, even if you just toss us a subscription or hit that like button on various platforms, we really, really appreciate it. Right now, we're in an excellent point of growth for the website. We've got a lot of eyes on us, and we're doing a lot of really cool things. And so hopefully we can continue doing this in a way that is both interesting in this space and in this industry, and healthy for all of us in a way that we can continue doing it, both mentally and financially. So really, really appreciate any sort of shares or likes or what have you, telling your grandma about our wonderful podcast. Like, this is the sort of thing that's going to carry Forever Classic Games forward. And I really want it to be something that celebrates games of all types and keep those dang ads out of our website. So this is the thing that'll really push us forward. So I hope that people join us on that journey.
Thank you for listening. This has been Forever Classic Games. I'm Joe, and that's Alex. And stay cool. Play some games.